My name is Richard Bussey. I work for GfK NOP in the UK, so I work in market research, and my specific role looks at social media and digital media and how we relate back to market research through established methods. So, the agenda for what we're going to go through today, just quite quick, is firstly looking at consumer trends and social media usage, then going into a few global and local behaviours before just summing up with a couple of conclusions and recommendations of where we think we're coming from and where we're going to. Just to be market researchy and be a bit different on you, just to reference these things up front in case they come up later. The three main sources that we're looking at here are main consumer trends work through the UK and globally, which is called Roper Reports Worldwide. The New Digital World, which is a syndicated set of reports from our consumer trends team, and also bespoke market intelligence that we've done through our DMI team, which is my team with more than 3,500 UK consumers at the beginning of this month. And to start off very, very quickly here, the main consumer trends we're seeing are the fact that there are new behaviours in consumer trends, and this is something that John and Luke have both touched on earlier today, but we'll come on to in a little bit. But also, really importantly, social media is enabling what we call the savvy shopper. So the person who is researching, he's not necessarily he's not necessarily dominated by low price or high price, but it's really about the best deal. And thirdly, how impact is affecting brand and promotions. So social media, what that means to you, what it means to what you think about, what it means to what you look for, and how really importantly that affects promotions. So, to start with our consumer trends, as I think has been said before, technology is driving consumer trends, but it's really important to say here that technology isn't really the trend itself. Technology enables people, it's a catalyst, and what technology allows us to do is basically move forward with our lives, and it really enables us to be what we want to be in much the same way that social media does. So what we see really that there are three key things coming out of our consumer trends, where we pick up 12 key trends throughout the world, and these are three of them that we think are important in the promotional area. And just to go into a bit more detail on these, firstly we have considered consumption, and this is really where people want an open and transparent relationship with a brand. They want to make a purchase with a clear conscience. They want to make sure that basically where they're sending their money to is then going to the right place. It's really about fair trade and elements around that and being of good benefit overall. Secondly, we have what we so-called redefining value and the savvy shopper again. And this is really about getting best value, as we say. It's about getting best value rather than just being price. And it doesn't mean that people are going to make the cheapest purchase. They're not going to make the most expensive purchase. It's not saying that I used to shop at Asda and now I'm going to shop at Waitrose. It's really looking for quality with as little compromise as possible. And thirdly, that everyone is an influencer now. These people, it's really the bane and the main benefit of marketers in the 21st century. These people are increasingly sceptical of the claims made by manufacturers and marketers. They turn more and more to their friends, to their families. As we've looked at already with Facebook and the recommendations about Netflix, this isn't so much about Netflix saying, hey, use us as a great service. People are increasingly believing that Netflix will say that, as will Love Film. But what's best? What do their friends, the people like them, what do they say, and that's really what matters. And so what technology is doing really is it's giving greater opportunities for brands to involve consumers, but it's also allowing savvy shoppers to define value on their own terms. And what this means overall with social media is that recommendation is key, and through the fact that we can review an infinite number of choices, both from people we know on Facebook, then going much further into blogs and forums and Twitter. And like I'm on Twitter, the amount of people I follow is compared to the amount of people I know is ridiculous, because you look at what you're interested in. If I'm interested in something like cycling, not many of my friends are into that. You reach out to a world that does. So it's not just about your friends, it's also about the people you trust, and those can be two different things. So, a few little stats on social media from our research at the beginning of the month. Of the people we spoke to, we see that 7 in 10 people are on social media in the UK, and this is driven by Facebook. Interestingly though, Facebook and social media are more female than male. We see that social media generally is more female than male, but Facebook even more so. So this is quite interesting, looking at really basic profiling. We'll come back to profiling in a bit, but on the very basic level, that's the first thing we see. But then when you turn this round, it's not to say that all of social media is about women rather than men. Different channels have different audiences. And we see that YouTube is more male than female, and also LinkedIn to a different extent. What's also interesting to note is that there is this midsection. Once we go through the behemoths of Facebook and YouTube, there is the midsection of numbers that look quite small, but are actually quite significant. So although it is just 1 in 12 people, 8%, who are using Google Plus regularly, which might be surprising given the fanfare that it received last year, it's still not a primary channel for reaching consumers, but that's not to say it shouldn't be used. And similarly, Pinterest and Instagram, which to me as someone who uses Twitter, these seem to be mainstream media, but then you go into the facts, you go into the numbers and you see that actually it's only 3 and 2%. And again, it's more female than male. So it's really about who you know. What we can see is that social media is not homogenous. It's rather a group of channels that appeal to different kinds of people. Looking at what this means for brands, what we see is that what people do when they're on social media are 72%. We see that half of them are reading articles and watching videos, or they're liking and commenting on friends' posts and photos. We also see, which is really crucial to marketers and people working in promotions, that 40% like or follow a company product or service, and 27% actually look for coupons, vouchers, discount codes or deals through social media. And we also see down at the bottom, 1 in 7, so 14%, is actually getting involved in social commerce and selling or buying something through what they see as being a social channel. And then again, with a bit of basic profiling, we see that again, it is women driving this, with women more likely to say that they comment on companies' products or services, they're more likely to like or follow a company, and they're also more likely to comment on a friend's post. And then breaking this down into owned and earned media. Firstly, with owned, we see really big scores, as we've said already, about the liking and following companies' products or service and reading articles or watching videos. And the really important bit about this is, as has been mentioned earlier today already, is that through owned media, what then happens is the social element allows that to be recirculated, and it allows consumers to put out these messages and expand your circle of influence upon their friends, and it adds the element of trust and element of sort of just faithfulness, really. And another interesting point is that, as we're saying, social media did only really start in the mid-2000s, and at that point it was driven by, or Facebook was driven by universities, other social media were driven by different groups, but largely speaking, they were the younger categories. But social media is growing up, the country's getting older, and what we can now see is that 52%, so more than half of people who are 65 plus that we spoke to, said that they use a social media website in the last 30 days. And this is really important because if we turn this round for a second, we go from 88% to 52%. So the flip of that is 12% to 48%. And it's quite interesting now just to think about what this means in reverse. And it isn't really that people go on a social network and behave in a different way. It's that the social network, as I said, it acts as a catalyst and it enables them to do the things they want to do. It's unlikely we're ever going to get 100% of people wanting to be on a social media website. But what people are doing at the age of 16 to 24 and why they're doing it is very different to the 65 plus. And just to be a little stereotypical, you've probably got your 16 to 24s who are planning their nights out and basically leading their entire social life through social media. Whereas the 65 pluses, they've got an older group of friends who are maybe more dispersed around the country. They've also probably got children or possibly grandchildren, and photos and videos of their grandkids are going on Facebook. So they're getting more used to it. And as time goes on, as social media evolves, or revolves, as was mentioned earlier, what this means is that through time, these people will be more familiar, and the idea that they'll be susceptible to brand messaging becomes greater and greater. And the fact is that these people, as I said, they're not on social media and therefore they change as people. They are certain people and they're predisposed to going on things like social media. Facebook is one thing, then Twitter and YouTube and whatever else. They're different kinds of people. But as a whole, what we find is that people who are on social media are more likely than average across the UK to say that they spend quite a lot of time researching brands before making a major purchase. And they're also more likely to say they're interested in other people's opinions, and perhaps unsurprisingly, that they go out of their way to tell other people about the products and services they like. So they are social, they like to make a noise, and they feel that they're part of a community. On top of that, they like all the elements of SCR, or it's more than average, so they like environmental responsibility. But really importantly, it's not just about sending out a message, it's also about making great content. So they are always looking for novelty and fun and everyday products. So this represents a big challenge, and it's not massively brand new information, but the point is these people are vocal, they have a sense of community, they've got a sense of social responsibility, but also they have big social lives, but they want things to be fun. It's not just about getting practical everyday messages. And furthermore, what we see is when looking into some American data, When you're looking at all social media users compared to the really top end of people who say they use social media every single day, people are more likely to buy and also not to buy because of their social media influences. So it's not just that we can turn them on, but it's when something goes wrong, we can really turn them off. So this really shows the importance of staying on top of what's being said about your brand on social media, social apps, to make sure that if there are negative messages, you can get out there and you can try and control it. Furthermore, not only do they like, but they're also active recommenders in almost all categories. So from everything on the left-hand side, we see money, home, food, fashion and beauty, entertainment, electronics, fitness, drinks, travel, and telecommunications are all things that people are active recommenders in. But interestingly, the only thing that they're not so active in at the moment is automotive. So we had a little think about this and really sort of had a bit of a brainstorm as what we know about automotive and what we know about the industry. And it's a more expensive purchase. Of the things you buy, pretty much second to a house of what you're going to do. However, comparing it to a house, if someone was to say that's a bad area, that might make a difference. So what is going on here? Why are people not recommending? And really the question here is, how can promotions be tailored around what we know about people and what we know about they like? Is it that people shouldn't be recommending a car, they should be recommending a test drive? How can we get people further down the route to automotive to move that no into the yes? Because there's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't be a yes. It just implies that the promotions that are going out at the moment, or what people are recommending, isn't best suited to how marketers are speaking in the area. And also, what do people like? Sorry. What we see is that, as we said before, fun alone is not enough. People do want fun, but it needs to be linked to other things. So first of all, something interesting to look at here that's risen by 3%. To show my support of the company to others. This is really passive recommendation. This is the fact that people want to fit in. There's a social desire to be seen as similar, but there's also sometimes a desire to nudge people along the right path of saying, I like this brand and I want people to know that, even if I'm not going to shout about it all the time. So how we talk about recommendation isn't just about people saying it. You need to include things like likes to understand recommendation best. But also it is about exclusivity. It's about people wanting to get access to exclusive content, to get updates about new products, and also to receive discounts and promotions and hear about sales. So again, the element of the savvy shopper. People feel that if they're giving something to a brand, if they're liking, if they're showing their support, then they deserve something back in return. It is a relationship. And the great news for the UK is that when comparing on coupon usage in the UK against other countries, and core 25 at the bottom of the chart is the average of the top 25 countries, what you see is that UK is well above average, and it's actually fifth in the world, at 77% of people telling us that they use coupons and promotions in everyday life. And then when combining that with social media, we actually jump to third. So all the countries that are above us, apart from the USA, drop away. Taiwan goes above us, but we see the UK going to 3rd% of social media usage combined with coupons and promotions. And again, interesting to think here how important technology is to this. So the example here about Apple Passbook, and how it's linked to, I think it's coupons.com have linked well with Apple Passbook in the USA, and then you have Voucher Cloud and you have About Me in the UK. And all these elements that link into GPS and really fast mobile broadband, which people in the UK often complain about not having 4G, but as someone who lived in Africa for 4 months last year, I can tell you our mobile broadband is extremely good. And we have these abilities that other countries don't have, and combining all of these factors together mean that people like me who's waiting for something to do can then go onto their phone and think, well, my mum and my sister are still in the shopping centre, I'm going to go off and spend £5 rather than £10 on something I don't particularly want, but it's going to kill some time. What we also see, so some slightly different figures to a mention from ITV earlier, but 48% of people access the internet via a smartphone or tablet, broken down by 45% on their mobile and 18% on tablet. And half of these, so pretty much a quarter of the country, uses a tablet or a smartphone when out shopping. So the idea that we can access all this information, you know where people are, or people certainly know where they are, the app knows where they are, and we can link all these things together, and shows that mobile is extremely important to the way that promotions are going. And just to look at social media, to come back to social media, when looking at social media users, 8 in 10 say that they use promotions when shopping, compared to just 7 in 10 social media non-users. So we see that although 7 in 10 isn't a small number, social media is driving promotional usage. Having said earlier that social media users are more female, we see that's even more the case with promotions, where we see that they're female, they're younger, but really interestingly, they're not of the lower social band, they're not of the lower social income. So again, this idea of savviness is really important. We're not saying that people use promotions because they need to save money. They have money, certainly the AB group, who are pretty high up there with 82%, they have a lot of money. But the point is they want to make sure they're spending their money correctly. So it's tapping into the right messaging around the fact that this isn't just cheap, it's really good value, it's a good deal, this is something you should be placing your money on. And also then looking at social media, people who use social media and promotions, what we see is that a quarter of people actually find their promotions through social media. So it's pulling everything together, driven mainly by people who go straight to the company product or service that they follow, with 17%. And really interestingly, these people are most likely to be regular users of MySpace, Instagram or Twitter. So although Facebook is key, what we start to think about here is Facebook is the behemoth of social media. And almost like television was 15 or 20 years ago with your adverts, there's no reason not to be on Facebook, but in the way that you might have had a TV campaign and then support it with radio or out of home, you now need to start thinking about having a Facebook campaign as supporting that with something like MySpace, Instagram or Twitter. And just some examples of how this has been done in the UK, some not particularly sort of groundbreaking ones, but just ones that I like. So you have ASOS and Instagram. And what ASOS has done here, it's really, they used Instagram. They know that their audience is largely female. They also know that Instagram is used more by women than it is by men. It's a younger audience, as is ASOS, and what they're doing is they're tying all these things together and showing people photos of their clothes rather than being in a traditional brochure or album that you send through the door like Next used to do 15 or 20 years ago. They're now showing people, they're showing their target audience photos of clothes that they want them to buy in a way that people who buy their clothes like to share photos. So it's really making this virtuous, and they're putting stuff out there that they know is likely to go viral because their target audience likes to share these pictures of these clothes in this format. And similarly, IKEA and Pinterest, aside from the ability to go and eat 20 meatballs, I don't think there's a huge amount that's appealing about IKEA. But what IKEA is doing here is actually letting you plan your trip through the months or weeks before you go. It's taking a method of social interaction, an ability to say, this is what I'm thinking of doing, I like this, what do you think? And allowing that sort of coffee morning discussion to take place on the internet rather than everyone coming around the house and having it there, because it really isn't otherwise that interesting, but they're creating energy and they're creating a buzz around it by using a really innovative format. And finally, a bit more of a male one. We know from earlier that that YouTube is a more male platform than it is female. And B&Q, who's traditionally been saying do it yourself, are now showing us how to do it ourselves through YouTube. And again, personally as a cyclist, I messed up my bike earlier this week, which wasn't very clever. The first thing I did, go on YouTube to try and get some advice. I'm not interested in reading it. I don't particularly want to pay someone to do it. I know it's possible. I'll go on YouTube to see how to do it. And this is what B&Q are doing here, of giving videos and actually but it goes beyond just giving videos of showing you what you can do. It then gives you ideas of things you can do further. So all three of these platforms are giving consumers ideas and basically helping them to express themselves, but ultimately driving them to their store to go and buy products and services they wouldn't necessarily have thought about. So it's promoting through the platforms that their customers understand best. So it's very clear, very clever, but also very simple. Just coming back to some data with our 27%, what we also see when looking at the most commonly used promotions, we see food and drink is way out at the top. So what we're talking about at the top really is about entertainment. It's food and drink at the moment with restaurants, and then more experience-based promotions such as health and beauty and days out and attractions. So there are kinds of promotions that are working really well, and this shows, and as we've seen as well, there's loads and loads of fertile ground in the UK for the fact that promotions do go down so well, and this backs that up. But it's also showing that there are others that aren't working so well. And again, with a tiny bit of basic demographic profiling, we see that health and beauty and fashion and clothing are more female, and sport and fitness and outdoors are more male. So this is kind of as you'd expect, but it does give us the possibility of thinking, well, why are we not seeing technology and electrical goods are more male than female? What's not being done here? And it's again flipping it on the reverse to try and understand better what can be done in the future to drive these scores up. And coming back to social media users and our non-social media users, see that health and beauty products and days out and attractions are much more popular through social channels. So people who are on social media are more likely to be picking these out. And yeah, okay, they are more social days out, they're more social events. But it's interesting to see that food and drink, which was at the top there of the key score of 55%, the actual method of getting promotions and getting your coupons and vouchers is, well, more people are doing it through non-social channels than they are through social channels at the moment. So again, just a possible area where we could maybe work a bit harder and be a bit cleverer with our targeting. I've talked earlier in this about male and female targeting, but really that is the tip of the iceberg, and we can do a lot more than that. And just before I finish, interesting to look backwards and see where we've come from. So since 10 years ago, the path to purchase is now much more around recommendation, reviews, and direct contact. It's not so much about, well, it's not so much about things like TV programs. It's about the social element of it. So it's everything working together in conjunction. We now expect things to work the way we work rather than just receive messages. And in conclusion, what should we do in the future? So firstly, what we really need to start thinking about is targeting and planning by personality type. So we've looked at male and female here, but we know that there's so much more to it than that. One woman is not the same as another woman, and a man is not the same as another man. Similarly, one woman can like doing the same sorts of activities and days out as a man can. Basic demographic profiling is no longer enough if we're going to evolve as quickly as social media evolves. We need to start thinking with our promotions and marketing in a much more savvy way. We need to start looking at attitudinal and behavioural measures, and also tying in our own brand segmentations to help us understand what social platforms are best, what promotions are best, and really trying to essentially spend less money to get more back in return. And secondly, social media is redefining the path to purchase. What we know, though, is that it's not just about putting all your money into one channel. It's about being on one channel at one time, but also supporting it well with another, appealing to the right audience and putting your money to the right place. So this is really about choosing and crafting the channels with care, and also paying attention to the fact that social media is a really, really fast evolving thing. We need to stay as close to that innovation curve and that point of evolution as much as possible if we're going to stay up to speed with social media and make sure that our brand isn't usurped by another one. And finally, social media users switched on to love promotions. So what we know, though, is this really aids the virtuous circle that is social media. If we put something out there, people, if it's good, if it's got good content, if it's fun and funny, or if it's just involving, whatever the right messages are for your consumers, if you put something out there, social media is a really great platform to have this. And then if you try and make it so, make sure it's activated for liking and sharing and retweeting, then what we know is that social media users do perform in these sorts of ways, and they will aid the virtuous circle of social media. So that's everything from me.